The Lighthouse had been an underground home church for a little over 5 years and had stressed mission pretty much throughout our history as a home church. And there had always been a young couple in the Lighthouse, the Hafley, Scott and Danielle, and their kids. And Scott had been leading a feeding ministry for several years, really before the underground was founded. And due to the political things that go on in St. Pete and the city discouraging that kind of open feeding ministry in the downtown parks and things, that ministry came to an end. And they had been feeding a couple of hundred people for 2 weekends a month. And out of that, the Rodriguezes had gotten involved in that with Scott, and both seemed to have a real heart to work with homeless people, people who were suffering all the disadvantages that so many ministries seem to want to address. And we think of homelessness as the classic guy under the bridge, or the guy in Tent City. And it began to occur to me that there were other kinds, and that there were people who had a roof over their heads, but in otherwise were cut off from society, no family, no income, suffering from disabilities. And through Scott's work at some of the ALFs in St. Pete, it became brutally aware to us that they were people who were just marginalized to an extent that was really heartbreaking. And we began to sit down and talk about that, and it was just so evident to me that day in sitting there in that leadership session and God speaking to me that the ministry began to really take shape in my mind at that time. And I sat down and met with them, and we discussed it and decided to take our home church in an entirely different direction. Presented it to the home church, and as you would expect, a lot of people that were comfortable coming every week and having fellowship and eating together and talking about mission began to fall away. And God pared this ministry down to its barest essentials, and we just began to serve these folks, and they live in a situation that's hard to describe. I mean, they are given $54 a month to live on. Their entire Social Security check goes to the ALF, and just the environment is difficult to understand if you haven't been there. Most of them suffer from some kind of disability. They're primarily not in an ALF because they're elderly. They're there because their situation in life has made it difficult for them to exist in society in a normal way. And so we began to go in and talk to the management of the place and ask them if we could do this. And we essentially began to think in terms of how would we adapt a home church to their needs. It's common sense that if you go into a place that's dark and where people face real, legitimate obstacles in their life, and where there is just a scarcity of hope and joy, and just the basic things, laughter and friendship and that kind of thing. You take for granted sometimes maybe going to your family a couple times a year and sitting down around the table and having a meal and laughing and telling stories and catching up. There are people that don't have that at all. It's really been great to see these young people come along for me, because my goal in it was to just put these young, committed Christian families and people into contact with a ministry that their hearts were crying out for, I think, anyway. Really, this grew out of their need, their search for a way to do this, a way to serve. And God, for whatever reason, helped me to begin to see a clearer vision of it, a way to do it, a real grassroots, down-to-earth way to do ministry, because we just knew there had to be more than food.